one of South Africa's biggest bloggers in the beauty, fashion, and travel blogging space now as well. And, you know, we were speaking a little bit about youth unemployment on the open line. Now we have a young South African who's doing great things in a new digital economy. And we want to understand how that journey has come to be. So, Mihlali, thanks again for joining us. And before we go into, you know, some of the business aspects of what you do, you know, the journey to becoming, in many ways, a globally competitive digital content creator, there's not that much about your early life. Tell us a bit about the journey, about becoming Mihlali Ndamase, and your early life, you know, life at school, and that background that, you know, I was trying to look for on your YouTube channel and I couldn't find.
Really? I think you didn't watch enough videos.
Well, there are like 500, so yeah.
Well, my early life, I was born in Durban, KZN, and my mom had me at quite a young age, so my gran was very hands-on in my upbringing. I grew up in Kokstad, which is also a small town in KZN, borderline of Eastern Cape. I am Xhosa. So that's...
Okay, Ungumni.
Mafago.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where I grew up, and then I went to a girls' boarding school, St. John's DSG in Pietermaritzburg, from grade 8 till matric.
So you finally told us the actual school, because I heard there was a boarding school. We didn't know which.
I don't want to give them free marketing. I'm joking.
Oh wow!
I'm joking.
Oh, wow. Look at this digital content creative entrepreneurship. Yeah, and what was that like? Like, what was it like? You know, being in a boarding school, being in that situation. Were you away from family a lot of the time? Was it like a weekly boarding situation, or like a full-on? Wow! So you were like in boarding school full time?
Yes, but my mom. So Pietermaritzburg is like an hour away from Durban. So if I ever wanted to go home for a weekend, I could, because my mom was there. But I didn't go home every single weekend. I really enjoyed boarding school. Hey, I think looking back, it must have been the best couple of years of my life so far.
Oh wow. And you were Xhosa living in KZN. Tell us a bit about the background and the different strands that come together in your family, because I know that there are lots of different cultures, even races, in your various different backgrounds.
Well, I didn't really feel any, what do you call it? The cultural conflict, being that I'm Xhosa and I grew up in KZN. Cause I mean, Kokstad is very much Xhosa dominated. So there was never really issues there. And even going to, Pietermaritzburg, I was very fortunate to not be in circles where I was sort of treated differently for being Xhosa. So honestly, I never really had any issues growing up as a Xhosa person in KZN.
And I think in your grandparents' side, you had different races, though?
My father's side. But the people who were different races passed away a while ago. I never met them.
Okay, so in many ways, you feel most comfortable within your Xhosa identity.
Yes.
So let's think through a little bit about how even in those early years, you started, you know, engaging with digital content, you know, becoming slowly but surely what would become, you know, the brand that is Mihlali Ndamase now. Was there something in your early life or in those early moments that like got you thinking about this?
Well, I started watching YouTube videos when I think I was in grade 8 or grade 9. And that's when I decided the beauty community on YouTube and sort of like the educational side of it, learning how to do makeup online, the convenience of doing it in your own home. And I knew from then that it was definitely something I was interested in. But at the time, I didn't know that you could actually earn a living off doing that, and that there were many business opportunities that came with doing that. So it was just something I was obsessed with, something I used to watch all the time. And then when I finally got my first camera, that's when I started my channel, which was in 2016. And that's when the business aspect of it sort of kicked in.
Can you remember like the first YouTube channel that you really liked, or maybe the first YouTube video that like got you thinking?
I think it's Michelle Fan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her surname correctly.
Michelle Fan, okay.
Yes, but she had like a Barbie makeup tutorial.
Oh, wow.
That was probably the first video I ever discovered.
So, okay, help me understand this. Would she do makeup for the Barbies?
No, she did makeup on herself, like a Barbie-inspired makeup look.
I see. Yes. As you can see, I'm not extremely well versed in these channels, but that's really interesting. So, were you like a fan of this channel from high school days?
Yes, I was a huge fan of that channel. And then I also discovered Ayeye J, and I still watch her content now.
Cool.
And there was also Nicole Guerrero, which is also one of my favorite YouTubers.
Wow. And then, so you're at boarding school, you're away from family.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been a challenge, but take us through some of the other challenges in your life, particularly in your earlier years, because I know you're still quite young. What were some of the major challenges that you feel you had to overcome in order to get to where you are now?
I think the biggest challenge was probably not knowing what I wanted to do. So, when you know what you're passionate about, you know what you enjoy, you know what you love, but people sort of fill it in your head, the idea that you can't necessarily earn a living with this. If you do this, you're not going to amount to anything, or people who go into that industry are airheads. That's usually what the beauty, profession was associated with. Well, then now it's a little bit more acceptable, a little bit more popular. People are actually getting credit for their work. So that was the biggest challenge growing up. I mean, I remember I was at a prayer meeting at church. I was probably like in grade 7, and we were going around asking each other what we want to be. And then I said, I want to be a beautician. And everyone was like, how are you going to make money off that? So it's something I struggled with till I was in matric. I still didn't know what I wanted to do when I was writing my final exams, but I was applying to universities anyway.
That's a really interesting point that you allude to there, because do you ever feel like because you're in the beauty space, people don't take the intellectual contribution that you make seriously, or understand the strategic thinking that's required for building a digital brand online to the extent that you've done it?
I used to feel that way, but now I've really come to realize that the profession's respected more, because we're moving into a digital era, as you said. I mean, people who are influencers, vloggers, bloggers, content creators are taken seriously because we contribute a huge chunk to the marketing and branding industry. So now we're getting a little bit more respect. Maybe it's because of the brand affiliation and the opportunities that people see that this is given us. But before then, it was honestly, there was no respect at all for people who were, content creators or influencers.
Well, I want to come back to that, but just to round off, the story, because I think many of our listeners will be interested just to know about the journey. I know that you speak about the influence of your grandmother in your life. Mm-hmm. Tell us about how your grandmother influenced you, and in many ways how it came to be that your grandmother became such an important influence on your life in those early years.
So I was raised by 3 incredibly strong women. I didn't have much of a male figure growing up because I didn't have a good relationship with my father. Okay. So my grandmother was always very inspiring to me, because in my eyes, I mean, my grandfather had already passed away at the time. So in my eyes, she was the man of the house. She basically took care of everyone. She was that person who took in distant relatives, cousins, to educate, put them through school, make sure they have their education, making sure that we have clothes on our back, food on our table. So she really did provide for us for the longest time. So I used to always look at her and be like, one day I want to be like her, I want to be as financially independent, as successful. And as I grew older, I sort of gauged like what she was doing, her businesses, her investments and whatnot. So I was really inspired by her.
And was this idea of how you became involved in, say, beauty blogging, was there anything within the house that maybe like inspired you early on in your life, or was it like a totally opposite direction?
Opposite direction.
Oh, yeah?
Opposite direction. Everyone wanted me to study either medicine or law.
Yeah.
So it was a completely opposite direction. But to be quite honest, I think 80% of the people in my family are entrepreneurs, so I don't know why they thought I would go through the traditional route.
Well, a birdie told me that you were even like selling jewelry to people at school and stuff.
I was.
So like, wow.
I've always been about business, hey?
Is this where you made your profits for this channel? Now we know. Like,
no, that business died a while ago.
Interesting. And yeah, so there was a professional background in your family as well. I know that the medical profession was key in your family. So did you feel pressure in those early years when you talk about, because I know I also get this, like there's a lot of professional people in my family that I in high school I was rapping and all of this, and people were like, what's going on here? Did you feel pressure to go into one of those professional careers given that like the medical background was in your family and other professions were also there?
I did. I certainly did. I mean, I found myself doing research on professions that would suit me based off my interest. So another interest of mine is logistics. So at some point I thought I'd go into law, maritime law, based off the fact that I was very interested in shipping. So yeah, it's been a long journey with the career choices.
Yeah.
So I definitely did feel pressure, but the one thing I did was I stood my ground. And I was also very inspired by my mother, because my mother's actually a creative, and I think she's the only creative in my family. She studied fashion designing, and she also did a business course. So she had her own clothing line, her own bridal store, her own factory. She manufactured uniforms for Southern Sun and whatnot. So I was really inspired by her, and I think she's been my support system since day one. My mother's the type of person where if I say I want to sell branded oranges, she'd probably be like, "Go for it, pumpkin. Let's do this. I'll support you."
Yeah.
So she really inspired me to sort of push through with what I had envisioned for myself and the field I saw myself in.
Well, stay tuned for the branded oranges coming on Mihlali's YouTube channel soon. Okay, cool. So thanks. I wanted to know a bit more about the context and the background. But let's speak about this very quick rise to prominence on, social media platforms. And I want to talk about that journey to your YouTube channel and of course, joining Instagram, Twitter now, where things just continue to explode every day, it seems, on your timeline. Can you remember the first that moment where you decided, because like starting a YouTube channel is hard, right? Because you're like, do I actually put myself out there? And then like, what if only 2 people watch, in a month? How did you come to the point where you're like, you know what? Gaining some traction, let me actually start this YouTube channel, which I think has been so core to your success.
Funny enough, I never went through the self-doubt phase before I started my YouTube channel. I know a lot of people go through that phase before they put themselves out there, like, should I start my channel? How will people receive it? I was so excited to start my channel. The moment I got my camera, I was like, okay, let's get into filming. What's going to be your first piece of content? I even had a book where I had a content schedule, and this is what I'm filming first. It's going to be my next video. These are days I'm going to upload on. So I was very, very excited about my channel. I think the main reason being that I knew what I wanted to do, so I'd already identified my niche. I knew I was going to place myself. I think the only reason why people get stuck in a place where they don't know what to put out is because they want to start a YouTube channel, but they don't know what to do on YouTube. And I mean, it's such a huge platform. You can literally do anything. So I knew what I wanted to do from the get-go, so I never really struggled with putting myself out there.
And tell us how this passion for makeup artistry began to develop. As you say, you didn't know what you wanted to do, but a lot of your channel focused on some of the skills that you learned within that field. And also tell us about like some of the like theories of, like makeup artistry, because this is a field of art in many ways in itself. And just educate us on like how this art works and how this art form, develops, and some of your thoughts on the art form.
Okay, my thoughts on makeup as a form of art, I think it's about self-expression. There's a lot of rules that people try to place on makeup, but now people have gotten into a space where you're allowed to be creative and you're allowed to do what best suits you. And that's something that I've always appreciated about YouTube, because people interpret makeup as an art the way they want to on their own platforms, and then there's a market for everyone. Those who like your skills and your techniques, the way you do it, will obviously subscribe to your channel and they'll watch your content. And sorry, what was the first part of your question?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the story of how you started to develop those ideas.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, and how you became interested in it and actually started honing your skills in that craft.
Well, I was very inspired by the beauty YouTubers I started watching at an early stage. And I also did do a makeup course. I did a 2-year makeup course. So I started my channel in the second year of my course. So I'd sort of just, develop basic makeup skills, and I already had an audience on Instagram, so I knew that it wouldn't be difficult for me to pull my audience onto my YouTube channel. So that's basically how I started off.
And it seems to me that makeup is an art form that is often overlooked in the media industry, although it's quite crucial to, for example, TV and the way that audience works. It's in some ways it can be kind of crucially important work, but sometimes work that goes overlooked despite the skill and the time that it takes to actually get good at it.
Yeah, that's true. You mean generally on TV and makeup artists aren't given enough credit, would you say?
I think so, yeah. Like, sometimes if I go on TV, for example, and you actually realize like how much skill is required and what kind of a difference it makes, particularly for certain forms of TV. But like the fame of makeup artists, for example, isn't the same as, say, presenters or producers often in the general public.
That's very true. That's very true. That's very, very true. I think the issue there is actually honestly in the media side of things. Makeup artists don't get enough recognition, but as you said, it does play a very crucial role. And I would say that they're probably slowly earning their respect. But in terms of the social media side of things, then they definitely do get their credit. I mean, people take it very seriously now to tag their makeup artists, for example. And, there's certain makeup artists who are doing extremely, extremely well. They, get afforded opportunities to go abroad and, relocate and work that side. So maybe it's something that needs to be worked on in terms of the media aspect of things. But in terms of social media, I think we're slowly getting there.
Do you have any funny stories of like the start of your YouTube channel? Because now it all looks like it's perfect, it flows smoothly. But I can imagine like there must have been moments where if you take us behind the scenes, like not everything was as smooth as maybe it looks now.
I still have those rough moments.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Like what?
Geez, there's so many things that can go wrong with producing content, especially when you're not a tech junkie.
Yeah.
So I often find myself having to research how to do the setting on my camera or call other people who are in a similar field. Like, hey girl, how do I make sure my background is more blurred and whatnot?
Yeah.
But I think the funniest story in the beginning, well, I only noticed it now, I didn't notice it back then, is that my first video was out of focus the entire time. So I filmed out of focus. But I mean, we live and we learn.
The entire thing? Oh, wow. Okay. Well, make sure you go and check that out. It's actually quite fun. Like, I like doing this with people's YouTube channels and pages. Is like you see how it evolves over time. Like you go back to the early stuff, the sound is all weird, and hopefully it progresses. I want to come to the business aspect of this now, because here, I think there's so much to be learned from what you're doing. And firstly, how do you see different social media platforms? Because you're on, a number of social media platforms. You also monetize on lots of different social media platforms, but people often look at them as though they're the same. What do you think the differences are from a content creator's perspective between Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, say?
Okay, so Twitter for me is a platform where you're able to create a conversation. So it's very engagement based. It's very casual. It's a very, very casual platform. I don't really regard it much of a business platform for me because I don't do a lot of sponsored content on Twitter. Only once in a while a brand will ask me for sponsored content on Twitter. Instagram is the business platform. Mainly because it's visual, you're able to put out a picture, product placement, you're using the product, but at the same time, I don't think it gives people enough information about a product or a service and what people would necessarily want to know. I think it's just that it looks good, it's pretty. Do you understand what I'm saying? Whereas YouTube is an all-rounder. So I really love YouTube, and that's what I appreciate about it, is that you're able to speak about the service or the product that you're promoting. They can visually see it as well, and you can demonstrate how to use it or how to incorporate it in your life. So I think Instagram and YouTube work very well hand in hand, especially for someone who is, producing content, someone who's trying to put out a message or trying to start a certain conversation.
And I want to get back into some of these theories because I think that's a really interesting take on different social media platforms. But you say you don't monetize Twitter, but we also want KFC. and like you get it delivered for free. So can you like maybe give me some pointers about how, cause like I'm a bit hungry at the moment. Wow. Like what did you think of that? Like was that planned?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
It really wasn't.
Seriously.
It wasn't. I mean, Twitter's like my diary. Whenever I'm feeling a certain way, I literally go on Twitter and I just tweet about it. Oh, I'm so irritated.
Yeah.
Oh, what a long day. Oh, I'm in such a good mood today.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I'm craving KFC. And then next thing I have vouchers for KFC.
Wow.
Which is quite amazing.
Life is good, hey? Where do I sign up for this? Some of us have to go the hard way. We're in conversation with beauty entrepreneur, digital content creator, Mihlali Ndamase, and we're speaking about her life, the context of how she's got to where she's got to as one of the leading digital content creators in our country right now, and also starting to think through the entrepreneurial model of what it is that she does. So we'll be back with more on this conversation. We're going to go to the headlines, and when we're back from the headlines, we'll discuss some of the business thinking and also where to from here for Mihlali. Make sure you give us a call if you want to interact with her on 011-883-0702. 25 minutes to 11. We are speaking to beauty entrepreneur, digital content creator, Mihlali Ndamase. And before we go back into the serious conversation about, your business model, how you've been able to monetize various social media platforms, can you tell us the genesis of this Twitter name of yours? How did it come about that you called yourself Drake's wifey?
Well, I love Drake. I really enjoy his music, so I concluded that I'm his wife.
So you concluded it's been decreed.
100%. I'm his number one supporter.
Does he know about this yet? Have you...
He'll know soon enough. He'll know soon enough.
Oh my goodness, my word. Twitter is such a funny place. Like what you were speaking about earlier was actually quite interesting about how Twitter is actually best used as a more casual platform. And I think sometimes people use it as if it's like a special blog space or it's a serious place, but then you can't really get people's personality. And on Twitter, you certainly just like bring your entire personality and literally say whatever's on your mind.
100%. You can even bring your alter ego on Twitter. I can't take Twitter seriously, to be quite honest. I don't see myself changing it into a blog space.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the business acumen that you've developed, because you've done really great things on social media. I think a lot of young people who are, looking at the difficult job market in South Africa, are inspired by people who are doing different kinds of things especially in the digital economy. And we're speaking about the different social media platforms. Take us through the way that you ended up turning this from something you were interested in into an actual career that you are now doing very well from.
Well, it basically happened very naturally. After I uploaded my first YouTube video, I think my third video, that's when I got approached by a very big makeup company.
Oh, wow.
And they were like, please come into our offices. We'd like to have a meeting with you. And from then, I just got a whole lot of opportunities. And I learned about monetizing my content. I mean, you do research and you learn as you grow how to monetize your content, sponsorships from brands, YouTube AdSense, which is also a form of income as well. So you just learn as you grow, and that's how I got into the business aspect of it.
And there are lots of different routes to monetization, as you say. On the one hand, there's directly from the ads on a YouTube page, but then there are also brand partnerships.
Yes.
Let's take both of those in turn. I think a lot of people don't know even that as a YouTube blogger you can make money directly from YouTube, even though it's not necessarily like the greatest split. But let's talk about that aspect of the monetization first. So how do you make money from ads on YouTube as a content creator?
So you need to register an AdSense account, which you link to your YouTube channel, and that will keep track of all your analytics, your engagement, your stats, and it will tell you how much you earn per video. So there's a graph. If you log into your AdSense account, you'll see a bit of a graph, and it tells you if your engagement has gone up or has decreased, and it'll sum up the amount you're supposed to be getting paid for that video, and then you'll just get a monthly paycheck from Google.
And then in terms of the other aspect of this, which I suspect is probably the even more profitable aspect, it's about partnering with brands that align with your niche.
Yes.
Take us through just some of the challenges and the cool parts about how you've ended up partnering with brands that are aligned to the kind of content that you're creating. Because I bet there's been some difficult and some disappointments along the road, as well as obviously many highs.
So I'd say the pros of partnering with brands is just being able to be paid to use the stuff that you already enjoy using, that you love. And that's if you're someone who's authentic, who's not necessarily going to partner with people just based off the fact that they're offering you a paycheck. That's the very fun side of it. And the disappointing side, I think, is when brands try to strip away your creative freedom. A lot of brands at SA haven't really fully adopted the whole influencer marketing thing. Yes, they've invested into it and they work with influencers, but very few understand that it's not necessarily, of course it's about marketing your brand and you have to protect your brand identity, but no one communicates better with a person's audience than the person who controls the platform. So I would know best what my audience responds to versus, you sitting at your head offices. So when brands come to you and they're like, we want you to do things this way and say this and act this way, then it just really just ruins the entire experience for you.
What kind of things do they do, without naming any names? But what kind of things have you seen where people have literally tried to change the whole platform?
I think them telling you what to say, for example, so giving you a script for a YouTube video. I mean, YouTube is a platform where you should bring out your personality. It's one thing for you to send me a caption for Instagram and then I take the picture. That's fine. It's Instagram. It's a picture. At the end of the day, people are more concentrated on what they see than reading a long caption.
Sure.
Whereas YouTube is very much about bringing in your personality. So if you're telling me what to say, people are going to sit there and they're going to be like, this is definitely not Mihlali. Yeah. So I think bearing in mind, people should just know that it's okay to give someone a brief and guidelines, but don't tell them what to say on their platforms. That's so unauthentic.
What do you think of the media space? Because in many ways, the digital media that young people are starting to, become more native on, whether that be in the world of beauty, whether that be in the world of even news, politics, music, is growing. And it seems to me that it's a lot less prepared and staged. Like a lot of what you said about Twitter is I literally say what's on my mind and I bring people into my world. It's not rehearsed. And on YouTube, there's no script. Actually, when you have a script, it sounds rehearsed and it doesn't sound authentic. What do you think some of the differences between this digital form of media and other more traditional forms of media, TV, radio, are?
It just makes the content more relatable. That way consumers feel as though people buy into what they believe in, right? So the difference between seeing an ad, a Tresemme ad on television where a model who probably has hair extensions and her hair's been colored and her hair looks perfect and there's probably some Photoshop to increase the volume of her hair. There's a huge difference between that and someone sitting in front of a camera and giving their honest experience with the product, showing you real before and after, results. That way there's more trust as well. And that's why I feel like social media is a better platform for marketing. I wouldn't necessarily disregard traditional media because it also does play a huge role. Reality is a huge chunk of South Africans don't have access to the internet and they may not necessarily be on YouTube. They can't afford to get data to watch YouTube. So obviously traditional media still plays a very huge role in the marketing industry. But in terms of being a little bit more relatable and giving more information and, for a product or a service, it's definitely social media.
I think one thing that's interesting about your YouTube channel is that you don't necessarily just put the best images of you out there. There's quite a lot of focus on, and this is quite vulnerable actually, putting pictures of you before you've done anything and putting it out there on different public platforms. I don't even do that. I also always try to get the light right. And then in some ways showing the transformation of what the makeup artistry does. Was that difficult? What was behind the thought of putting out these sort of transformative images and showing a more vulnerable side of yourself for a public audience?
It is difficult, especially if, you're expected to be perfect at all times. I mean, we all go through our own challenges. One of mine was adult acne, and acne basically since I was young. So I had to get to a point where I was comfortable enough to be like, okay, guys, this is me. And I think I got the boost of confidence to do that because I sat down and I thought to myself, so many people go through these kind of issues. And, everyone on social media is so obsessed with looking perfect and looking a certain way, having as if their life is in order and, they don't have one pimple on their face. So why not just, open up a conversation, an honest conversation with my subscribers, my viewers about acne being a reality and how you can improve on your skin instead of let's just cover up some more and let's Photoshop and let's airbrush.
And what was that process like when you did reveal some of that vulnerability and actually show that you were, a normal human being who goes through many of the same challenges, and even like worries about personal appearance? What was that like? What kind of response did you get?
I mean, I'm blessed with a very amazing audience. My subscribers, my viewers are very, very supportive. So I got a very positive response. I got 95% positive, and there were very few people who were negative, but I didn't let their opinions get to me.
When you say that, like, the era we're in is an interesting one because I think before the social media era, it was a lot easier to ignore trolls and haters. But every day, if I'm doing this show, like, someone's not going to like the way I pronounced a word or whatever. And I'm like, wow, you really decided to actually tell me how I pronounced that word of all things. But I think, to be honest, it can have an effect, and in many ways, I think people in the public space are involved in this kind of dance where they pretend they're not seeing these things, but we're all seeing these things, and I can only imagine with an audience of your size, people have all kinds of opinions. Firstly, have there been things that have hurt? And also, how have you developed mechanisms and techniques, particularly as a young South African, to try and shield yourself against just the trolls?
There have been incidents where people say hurtful things, but there's very few things that I let affect me. I think I was very fortunate to sort of grow in the social media space once I had developed a thick skin. Had I grown and sort of peaked at a stage where I wasn't very sure of myself, I was a bit insecure, then I would have let a lot of things get to me. But I mean, I developed a very thick skin at a young age. So I know how to differentiate between someone who's giving me constructive criticism, which is definitely something I can take, and someone who's just trying to disregard my work and be disrespectful. Someone who's looking for attention. So those kind of people, you should not give any attention. But at the end of the day, we aren't perfect. We all have our days where I might just give you a piece of my mind. But, that's the reality of putting yourself out there. People are entitled to have an opinion because you're in the public space now. And
there's a lot of talk about, I don't know if our generation, because I'm 30 now and I believe you're like 23, so I'm probably in like 3 generations over you, given how quickly things move. But like an older generation who might be listening, they have kids who are maybe interested in a YouTube career, don't really get what it's like to grow up with social media just being a normal part of your life. Like, this wasn't something that came when you were 40 or 50. Like, social media is an everyday part of life. And what do you feel like that's like? Like, that social media is just a normal part of everyday life for this generation?
It's a blessing. As you said, there's a very high unemployment rate in South Africa. And I think social media has just allowed us to have opportunities where we create business for ourselves. Besides being an influencer and being a public figure on social media, you can start your own business. You don't have to worry about renting out a store. As long as you have an Instagram page and a website, then you can earn a living off social media. So it's obviously very normal to us. I don't really catch myself thinking about what it must be like to grow up without it because I can't relate. But it certainly has been a blessing.
Absolutely. In conversation with beauty entrepreneur, digital content creator, Mihlali Ndamase, and Mandla now wants to call in. Mandla, welcome to the show. What's on your mind and what would you like to say to Mihlali?
Morning, Sizwe and Mihlali. Two things I just wanted to establish. One is that what is the view of Mihlali, whether this digital technology and YouTube being Instagram, do a majority of girls, women in South Africa misunderstand the whole concept around it? And if I would like just need to have view on that. And secondly, she explains it very well. If one was an academic, will package it and make it a degree or something. But then what I'm more interested in is that could one simple say, I'm a DJ, I'm talented, or I could be a lawyer like myself and play music at the same time, or can you do both? But what is her view on the understanding of the concept which she's talking about by a majority of ladies on the internet? Because you find to an extent some people misunderstand this whole thing. For them it's about benefits to go into clubs, to access millionaires, billionaires, entrepreneurs, and that's where it gets a bit murky.
Okay, thanks Mandla for your call and your questions. Mihlali?
I don't know how to answer this question. Well, I don't know. I think with everything, I mean, if he feels that's a dark side, women who are on social media to access millionaires and entrepreneurs, then with any field really, there'll always be a dark or a corrupt side, I should say. And then some of us just use it for business, and also who says that those millionaires and entrepreneurs don't use it as a platform to access beautiful women? It could work either way. So each to their own. How someone uses a platform is up to them. I mean, it is a free space. And with regards to being able to be in a serious what is it, corporate? And
I think it was.
What was he asking?
Yeah,
if you can be a lawyer
I'm glad
and a DJ.
you addressed the last part of the question, because that was a fascinating view, and also. Okay, I'm going to come back to some of what you said there, because I think that's important stuff. But he was also talking about like the decision whether you want to try and balance a traditional form of employment with doing something like this, or just going all in and making this your full career. What are your thoughts about like whether it's possible to balance these things, or and how did you make the decision to? I know you're studying part-time as well, but it's kind of connected to your career as well. What are your thoughts on the balance of this?
I think it's definitely possible. That also depends on someone's discipline and if they're able to have their priorities in check. You know what? People honestly sometimes undermine the work that goes into creative industries. Being a DJ is extremely demanding. You'll find that if you are a lawyer and your interests lie in music, once you sort of tap into a market where you feel like you're comfortable as a DJ, you might find that you might even want to leave your law profession and just focus on being a DJ, because it's extremely time consuming. It's physically demanding of you, and it's exhausting hours, So I think it's definitely possible to balance the two. I mean, people have done it before, so I can't sit here and say it's not possible, but what I'll say is that it's quite demanding.
You reflected a little bit earlier on some of the unfairness in the way that gender comes into the pressures that are put on content creators. I've never heard one of my, men. I've never heard men who create content on YouTube saying, "Oh, you're just doing this so that older rich women can send you DMs." Tell us about some of the unfairness that you've seen in terms of gender in the industry that you're in.
Well, I'm blessed to be in a very woman-dominated industry. So I haven't really had any unfairness in terms of gender generally. I think the only unfairness comes in on social media, where men can be extremely disrespectful towards women and sort of like devalue women. But that really has nothing to do with the business aspect of what I do, because I deal directly with client, and most of them are women, so I've never really felt as though I'm being disrespected, my profession's being disrespected in any way, or I'm being disrespected as a person.
What do you like outside of beauty blogging, outside of, the business that you do? What are the kinds of things that you don't necessarily show publicly, but that you like enjoy and you do?
I'm a movie junkie. I love watching movies.
Okay.
I love cooking.
Favorite movie?
Oh, so many. The Great Gatsby, Law Abiding Citizen, John Wick. I Identity Thief, anything with Melissa McCarthy. I love her so much. She's so funny.
Yeah.
What else I like doing? I like cooking, but I don't cook as often as I'd like.
Favorite dish? To cook and to eat, or are they the same?
I think to cook, I really enjoy making oxtail or a lamb curry. I like hearty meals. And to eat, same.
Do you read? Do you...
Not as often as I'd like. I mean, this is a problem I've had my entire life. I really struggle with finishing a book. Once I know...
You see this YouTube generation.
And I mean, we're a visual.
It's true though.
I prefer watching something than reading, to be quite honest.
I mean, I'm like an academic, but often, even with my academic work, the most common way I consume information is listening or watching these days.
Exactly.
Yeah. We've got another call coming in here. Emily, welcome.
Hey, how are you, Cesar?
Good. Thanks. Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you. It's actually my first time, so I'm a bit nervous.
Congratulations.
Yes. So as I've been listening to Mihlali right now, she gave a response to the first caller. The first caller asked her a very long question, and I was actually struck by her response. What she did was she actually laughed a little, and then she said, I actually don't have an answer to this question. And I was like, wow. What an authentic soul. Because, oftentimes when people are being interviewed, they want to sound so perfect by giving an answer to every question. But here's this young lady here who is just put on a radio live, and she was just so honest. She was like, look, I don't have an answer. And I actually love that so much about her. I love your authenticity so much, girl.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Emily. So as you were saying, never mind the trolls. There's so much positivity, and sometimes you just need to focus on the people who are inspired by what you're doing.
100%.
Yeah, that was cool. I think the interesting thing about what you've been saying about social media is, on one hand, there's this criticism that it's artificial. People put images of themselves that aren't necessarily a true reflection. But a lot of what resonates with your audience is the opposite. It's like being honest, being imperfect, and then allowing people to feel like, yes, you can put these images out of yourself that cast you in a good light, but if you see the journey behind that and what that means, that's often a more honest way of going about that content. Is that how you feel?
100%.
Yeah.
And I think that will honestly take you a very long way if you're able to be yourself and show your imperfections. It honestly does take you a long way because it makes you more relatable.
The thing about the influencer space as well is that I think a lot of people try to use influencers for their own ends as well. And I guess saying no can be a difficult thing. Have you ever been asked to say something political about, a political party or some social issue? Oh, wow.
I run far away from that.
Wow. So people have approached you to be like, can you support?
100%.
Oh my goodness. Do you want to spill the tea?
No.
This is a safe space,
Nope.
ANC?
I'm not spilling any tea.
DA?
I'm not spilling any tea, but I can't comment on that.
Don't worry, we'll follow up on Twitter. Mihlali Ndamase, thank you so much for joining us on 702. It was great to get insight into your journey and your business strategy. Wishing you all the best for the future.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching the content. Like, share and subscribe on all platforms. smwx.co.za to join the WhatsApp channel. And let's build a new conversation for a new generation. I hear you.